School shootings in U.S. history. A former student of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, went on a gun rampage, killing 17 and injuring a dozen more.
You saw what?
Dead bodies around the floor and blood all around the floor.
How many people?
Like 5 on the 3rd floor.
Did they look like students?
It was 1 teacher and 4 students.
So the dude pulled the fire drill. We went outside. Boom, 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 boom. We heard a gunshot. I thought it was firecrackers, but after I heard the last shot, I was like, oh, no, I'm out.
Oh my God!
Someone could come in and bring a gun and shoot up the school. You start texting your family I love you, because you never know if you get shot or killed.
There's no word that can describe how you feel, because at that moment you're wondering, where's my kid? Is he okay? Is he safe?
During the shooting, many of the students were holed up inside classrooms, posting distressing messages online. We managed to speak to Polina Alajnik, a student who was in the school at the time.
We were about to leave school because it was 10 minutes before the bell rang, supposed to ring, and we heard the fire alarm, and we started to walk out. But then, the school staff, they told us to go to the auditorium and hide because it's not a fire drill. It was code red, and at first, everybody still thought it's kind of a drill, fake drill that they do in the schools. But then we just heard the people starting talking about, oh, there's a shooting, in the next building, that someone already got killed, and, this is serious. They told us to be on the floor, so nobody can see us, and all that stuff, not to be on our phones, and we were just listening, mostly when we realized it's real, and we were just really waiting. At some point, they came into the room and they told us 30 minutes later, they told us everything is clear around, but we are not gonna let you out right now because we still didn't clear all the school. Everybody was just trying to reach out to their friends and their family. I'm not harmed. I just feel really sad and kind of lost because I don't know what to do or how to react to those stuff, because it's just never happened to me, and I just don't think that going to school is going to be the same after what happened.
Police have identified the suspect as Nicholas Cruz, a 19-year-old former student of that school who was expelled for disciplinary reasons. Police said he was armed with a semi-automatic rifle and had multiple magazines. Cruz has told police that he was the one who carried out the shooting. Well, he has been charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder, and students at the school described the suspect as, quote, troubled. It's been reported that teachers were warned about him some time ago, given his enthusiasm for firearms in his free time. And significantly, the FBI and the police have admitted they had received tip-offs about the gunman years before the attack, but somehow failed to investigate.
We have uncovered at the Broward Sheriff's Office that we've had approximately 20 calls for service over the last few years regarding the killer.
The FBI has determined that protocol was not followed. The information was not provided to the Miami Field Office, and no further investigation was conducted at that time.
We've seen time and time again over the last few years our intelligence agencies across the West dropping the ball in terms of getting tips, Being aware of potential threats and not following up on those threats and taking out preventative measures. It seems lessons are not being learned. They need to have a proper review about, what exactly are the threats? What are they trying to do? How can they best protect the people of their country to protect them against these threats? And that doesn't seem to be done.
In France, intelligence sources say that of almost 2,000 citizens known to have travelled to join Islamic State in the Middle East, 67 of them came from one particular suburb of Paris. And so we dispatched RT Charlotte Dubinsky to speak to people there.
A short train ride from Paris is Trappes. On the surface, there's nothing much to set it aside from the thousands of other towns in the country. But you don't have to scratch very deep to see that Trappes is very different.
Well, you won't see any non-halal butcher's shops. There are, I think at the moment, over 1,500 prayer rooms and 5 mosques. If you look at people on the street, you won't see couples holding hands. You'll see the women are dressed in strict Islamic dress. There's a lot of homeschooling. So you couldn't really consider Trappes as a typical French town anymore. It's a little bit like a state within a state.
For decades, it's been considered a magnet for Muslim fundamentalists. Hardline Salafism and Wahhabism are widely practiced, and Trappes has become synonymous with jihadism.
Dozens of people left here to join Islamic State. Others have carried out attacks on French soil or have been linked to the Night of Terror in Paris in 2015. And while the terror threat appears to have been dialed down in France since the state of emergency was lifted, some claim that areas like Trappes remain a hotbed for jihadism.
It's only a matter of time before we have another attack. The basic problem is the ideology that's driving this, and this goes much deeper than terrorist cells planning and executing attacks.
That ideology is so ingrained that last year a poll of French high school students revealed 32% of Muslim students believed Islamic doctrine was superior to scientific fact. Another in 2016 showed that 68% believed Islamic law was superior to French law.
There's also concern that in an area like this that was once branded a no-go zone by the authorities, that Sharia is becoming the law of the land.
The full veil covering has been banned for 8 years, yet the police are often reluctant to intervene after riots in 2013, when officers tried to ID a woman who was fully covered.
It's a very, very fragile situation which the government doesn't want to provoke urban riots which would quickly spread like wildfire all over France.
President Macron says he wants to reorganise Islam in a bid to fight fundamentalism, but some experts say that's a pipe dream. Radicalisation in places like this, they say, is already far too deep-rooted to dig out. Charlotte Dubinsky, RT, Trappes.
Face prison sentences, while other European countries have tried to reintegrate former ISIL militants back into society. Denmark, for example, ex-jihadists have even been given apartments and jobs to promote reintegration. Earlier, we heard opposing views from our guests on how to deal with returning jihadists.
Initially, Britain said we're going to make them stateless, remove their passports, not going to allow them re-entry. Other countries then said, let's take a more enlightened approach. Some of the Nordic nations said, let's try and repatriate them, have counter-radicalization programs, which in part have actually been quite successful in some areas. At the same time, then, the US has now taken the lead, and the US Secretary of Defense said foreign countries need to repatriate their own citizens and deal with them using the rule of law. And I think that's a sensible way to go.
They should not come back here. It's as simple as that. Because they've committed the crimes abroad. So why should the taxpayer foot the bill for all this rehabilitation and all this sort? And then probably they're in jail for quite a while. That costs more money. When these crimes have been committed abroad, let the authorities deal with them under the rule of law in them countries.
You know, there are lots of different stories about what happens to these people if we make them stateless. Ostensibly, they will stay out there, they will keep breeding extremism, terrorism and radicalization, and they'll keep killing and they'll keep hating us. So it's a problem we have to deal with. You can't hide from it.
you cannot fall back on this British passport and say, oh, I committed atrocities abroad, but I'll throw my British passport into the mix so I get sent back home. No.
How do we know people have committed crimes without putting the evidence in front of them and putting them on trial? Just to assume people went out there. So,
well, they don't have to go on trial here.
I'm in London
regularly.
They don't
have to be on trial here. They go on trial when they've been caught. Well, there is a way, but obviously the UN is so weak, it's laughable. And the EU, again, is so weak, they're just non-existent. They should have had buffer zones there. They should have had the UN peacekeeping forces making safe areas. And so we could properly categorise these people. Rather than, so okay, these people going in to fight for whichever side, these people fighting of Kurdish descent against ISIL, but now because they're fighting for the Kurds, they're being classed as terrorists here. It becomes a ridiculous situation.